Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here on a Saturday morning. Thank you for showing dedication to the Trans-Himalayan knowledge exchange by being here. Before I start our conversation today, which I'm very excited about, this topic is very close to my heart, and this is part of something that I do almost every day. So I would like to start with like a very short personal account, and then we'll go into the panelists and the conversation. I'll take you back to almost a decade ago. I came back to Nepal, and right after coming within few months, I went to Mustang. And I heard these two words, Amchi and Soa Rikpa. And it was very integral part of our knowledge system that I did not know about. I was excited to learn about the Himalayan knowledge that lies out there, but I also learned about a part of my identity that was lying out there for more than 3 decades without me knowing. And I was excited. But at the same time, as a returnee who has a PhD in chemistry, I was ashamed to know about Ayurveda and have learned textbooks of Ayurveda, but haven't even heard these 2 words, Amchi and Soa Rikpa. So I decided to dedicate rest of, let's say, next 10 years into research of medicinal plants and indigenous knowledge, and bringing those knowledge in the form of stories and products into the market. That's what I've been doing. Recently in November, I went again to Lomangtan and met the royal Amchi, 6th generation traditional healer, physician to the royal family. And I thought I knew quite a bit more in 10 years. And I was humbled again to learn there's so much to learn, so much to do, but also so much to preserve and give back to these knowledge bearers who've been in that mountain trying to disseminate knowledge and preserve this gem of a knowledge. Then I came back, and from being a scientist and entrepreneur, I also added one more badge to my title, agri-entrepreneur. So I've recently started farming as well. So as I say this, we talked a lot about climate change, connectivity, and now coming into community. But I realize it's a discourse about our personal and collective identity, not just within borders, but trans-Himalayan and trans-border identity. And that's what we're excited to explore today here. Welcome to our esteemed panelists. They have such depth and experience of knowledge around indigenous knowledge, and they are trying to preserve, harness, while also trying to bolster the identity of the community they are working with. So big round of applause to our esteemed panels, and I'll start with Tenzing. So you are CEO of Menjong Sorig Pharmaceutical Limited that has a 46-year-long history where it has evolved as a traditional medicines manufacturing company. Could you please shed some light on how it has been able to harness the power of Himalayan herbs and indigenous knowledge over the years, also touching upon the participation of the government and community in the process?
Thank you so much, Pratibha. A very good morning, and Kuzu Zambola. I'm Sring Tenzin, and I'm leading the company called Menjong Sorig Pharmaceuticals Corporation Limited, which is owned by the government, but it is financially independent and managed independently. And I'm very glad that you talked about Soa Rikpa. So basically, I'm very honored to be talking about the indigenous knowledge in front of the distinguished delegates here. And the topic is very much relevant to the 3 C's here. And I'll be talking basically in 2 headings, like firstly, how traditional medicine has come to Bhutan and how this is being, and the next is how this is being practiced in Bhutan. The first one is our Bhutanese traditional medicine actually has originated from Tibet. Many years back, when there was no road connections, when Bhutan was not into modernization, there was a lot of trade relations between Tibet and Bhutan. And that is why the type of traditional medicine that we practice is also called Soarikpa. And Soa Rigpa, in fact, is a science of healing. And never know that it has a lot of science in it. And then it is also said that Soa Rigpa is one of the oldest surviving and well-documented medicinal traditions in the world. But this is hardly being recognized and hardly being known to others. Even myself, my background is electrical engineering, but somehow landed up into traditional medicine more than a year back. But now, even I started believing in Soarikpa and started taking medicines from those traditional medicines. There's so much in it that I think most of us don't know about the traditional medicine. And for centuries, the Bhutanese has been practicing Soarikpa, and initially the Tibetans used to refer Bhutan as Menjong. That is how my company is named. Menjong means the land of medicinal plants, which means this shows that how rich is our biodiversity there in Bhutan. It has over 7,000 species of plants already identified. So therefore, and the Soarikpa is also associated with Buddhism. So therefore, many Bhutanese went to Tibet and learned Buddhism, and at the same time, they learned Soarikpa, because there was institute in Tibet which teaches Soarikpa. So what the Bhutanese used to do is, they go there and learn Soarikpa, and in turn, they used to take medicinal herbs. So that is how they exchange the knowledge with the medicinal herbs. And that is how Soarikpa has become one of the is the main as the main traditional medicine for Bhutanese. And in terms of the how it is being implemented in Bhutan, the medical services includes both traditional and modern medicines. So which means people have the right to go to traditional medicine hospitals as well as the modern medicine hospitals. And this is ingrained in the constitution. So people should be having access, the Bhutanese should be having access to traditional medicine as well as modern medicine. So therefore, you can see across the country, wherever there's a modern hospital, there's a traditional medicinal hospital under one roof. So that is how this has been into the policies of the healthcare system in Bhutan. So maybe I'll leave it here.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting on how government is also taking ownership of traditional medicine. And we talked a lot about PPP yesterday. And today, this is a classic example of quadruple helix where community is also involved, and my question will be around that next. But for now, I'll go into Anushka's domain and then explore a little bit about her journey into indigenous knowledge and about her company. Currently, many youth are leaving the country and many more are reluctant to continue their family businesses, especially around indigenous knowledge. We've talked a little about it, and we have experienced this personally also. Thus, we're losing indigenous knowledge and skills. On the other hand, you returned back and decided to take on this challenge of doing business in Nepal around traditional knowledge, working with the community even you belong to, right? How has been this journey, and why did you take on this more convoluted and harder route, I would say?
I think you summarized my life quite well out there. I do choose convoluted routes, and I do question myself a lot as well as to why. I think as opposed to me having a calling of, having a higher purpose and this is what I should do, it was just a series of what seemed logical decisions at that point of how I am where I am, as an 18-year-old who just wanted to see how much I could stretch. So decided to pursue my education in Sydney, in Australia, because I wasn't that bold as well to undertake education at a place where I knew nobody. Went out there, I'd always say I'd come back. And every year everyone would say, that's what everybody says at the beginning. And I said, maybe I will change as well. But something in me was just not clicking. And as opposed to some of my friends whom I call lucky that know what their calling is very early on, I did not know. So it was so much of an hit and trial of what do I not like, what do I not like? And it always came back to what I didn't realize, what best termed right now, I think, is capacity building and capability development. So that in the form of pageantry came, and then I came back to Nepal. In terms of starting this line as a business, I come not from a family of business owners, and this was definitely a more difficult route because business was always referred to as bringing tensions home. In a job, you do your job and that's it. You know what holidays you're going to get and that's going to be it. So it was a little bit more difficult, but I realized, and I'm still realizing, I think that convoluted paths is what I gravitate towards. Speaking about Makuse and the indigenous knowledge and recipes that they are, I guess belonging to that community, you don't even think that, oh, it is an indigenous recipe. It is so big, it is so precious because it comes so easily, it is part of our daily. I think that realization came in very early, came in as a very special point for us to have started this, because the story is that my co-founders, the people who said to me, my mentors as I refer to them, saying, Anushka, Gutpak Pustakari are too good, they're losing their essence, you're a Newar, you should do something about it. Lead it. This just, something needs to be done about it. We're non-Newars. They were from another wonderful indigenous group, the Tamangs. But ironically, it was them who said, don't you realize how good it is? Do something with it. Don't know what it is, do something. And after 10 months of rigorous hard work and research of what do we do with it, Makuse developed, and today is a 4-year young, has just stepped into its 4th year of an authentic Nepali luxury desserts business and a brand. The story is when we first went to find where do we get these recipes and when we trial it, we went into the alleys of Nordevi, which my father used to say used to smell wonderfully of Gutpak and Pustakari when he was growing up, the traditional and authentic candies and recipes. When we went in, the maker said, Milena, can't share the recipe. And I said, fair enough. Would you like to? We were so open at the very beginning to say we could partner, we could come together, we could take this to the next level. No heed was paid. After that, we tried different routes. I sent my more fluently Newar-speaking father to have a conversation with him to try to coax the recipes out. And we were told flat on our face that he will whisper the recipe into the ears of his eldest son before he passes. And that was going to be it. So it's very interesting when we hear about the larger end, what our opening keynote speaker very rightfully said, that as much as dialogue in the policy level is absolutely essential, how is it being trickled down, and where are we losing that connection that while the passion exists so very deeply, perhaps at the top, to preserve identity and to preserve what we see as very, very important, how are the actual knowledge bearers considering it? And how do we realize or recognize, or rather don't? In the process of finding more and more recipes, we also went to many moriposo, as they're called, bakeries, I guess, the closest synonym, the closest meaning word in English would say that met so many people who have been in the business for almost 60, 70 years, wanting to send their kids abroad, just cannot wait to shut this store down and have everybody go abroad and just not continue with it. So seeing that state, I think, was very sad, as well as I've always believed in, you've got to find the root cause, though. You also touched, Prativedi, on the youth leaving the country, which has been just a sticker that everybody loves pasting on all of Nepal's problems. Why are we in trouble? Because all the young people are leaving, because we do not care about our country or our families, and that is it. That's a one statement that has been pasted on every headline with a photo of a crowded airport, and that's it. Why? What are the social reasons? Lack of job opportunities, and the government is just the second subtitle that will probably make it, but that's it. But there needs to be more discourse and conversation and dialogue around why. Because all of this is part of a larger problem that cannot just be pasted with one answer of the youth leaving the country. So yes, seeing all these fragmented parts, especially around what I do, gave me so much more perspective that perhaps this is a very crucial point to be saving so many things, including language, recipes, wardrobe and fashion and styles, jewelry, accessories, wearables. It is a very crucial point to be talking about these things, because once the ship is sailed from Nepal, a landlocked country, or a land-linked country, should I say, Sajeev, it will be gone.
Thank you very much, Anushka. You said you found out your calling quite later. I would say that's pretty early on. Many people don't find what they want to do in life until much later, even me, much later than you. So that, and another, you talked about Nardevi. That's an amazing, you guys should just go there. That's one place I have spent a lot of time around herbs as well. So you know, Nardevi is a very interesting place as well. So that's where we share common interest. But you talked about youth leaving the country and things like that. And in my next question, I'll come around with a question around how can we create enabling environment. Before that, I'd like to go to Marie. And she is a language expert. And my question to you is, you've been working with Indigenous knowledge community for almost 13 years in Nepal. And you're not even Nepali, right? And you're so dedicated to this, right? And now I think you're more Nepali than many Nepalis here. I need to say this because we talked about this in depth, and you know, her passion towards Nepal and the community is amazing and breathtaking. So could you please share some accounts of how language is integral to preserving and harnessing Indigenous knowledge with some examples, because it's beyond the dimension like many of us might be able to think about, and you can see that as a language expert. So.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Pratibha. Yes, hi everyone. Yes, the first time I came to Nepal, I was barely 19 years old, so it was 20 years ago. And the first thing which really struck me was the language diversity in this country. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to pursue my education in linguistics and become a linguist. When I was little, I wanted to become an anthropologist because I was interested in understanding how people experience the world differently. But the first thing that also came to my mind when I was thinking about this anthropology is that I couldn't be an anthropologist without understanding language. And basically that's really what it is. Language embodies the knowledge of the people. This is definitely true. So why is that? Is because knowledge is really intricate into the language, the structures of the language, in the formation of the words, or even in the grammatical features. So for example, as for the words, we have a knowledge of the environment, we have knowledge of the culture, the history, or else the values of the community. Example of that would be, for example, as for the environment, we find in language knowledge of many different things, right? How the way the community classifies, for example, trees or animals or insects. Yeah, and along with that, the use of the plants and in terms of medicinal knowledge, as Thierry was talking about. And yeah, for culture, we have many, I mean, it's really like linked with the community, of course, and their culture. For example, I've been working for the past, so in Nepal, I've been working on like 3 different indigenous languages. First, Magar, for those who know, in Nepal there are officially 123 languages spoken, but there might be more. It depends what we consider to be a language. But basically, Magar is spoken by many people in many different places of Nepal, but I've been working in South Pokhara in a district called Siangja, so this is the first language I started to study in Nepal. And then this led me to start working with the last nomads of Nepal, the group called the Rautes. They have a language called Khamchi. And then later on Chepang. And I've been working on Chepang for the past 6 years. And as it turns out, these languages are from a family called Tibeto-Burman or Trans-Himalayan. People also call it Sino-Tibetan. And all of these languages are related. So what is also interesting in the study of these languages is our ability to understand how they are related and the history of these peoples through the migrations. Yeah, so in terms of history and culture, there is a lot embedded in language. I would love to continue to talk about this maybe later if you are interested after this.
Yes, thank you very
So
much.
to say.
I saw the importance of language, especially the script. When I went to Lomangtan, Sowa Rigpa, written in Tibetan, original text, and Ayurveda in Sanskrit, Devanagari. And I could explore the books of Ayurveda, so it was much easier for me to learn that. Whereas it was impossible for me to even understand a single word of Sowa Rigpa. You know, and that's where it really starts as we lose language and being married to a Newar with different language. We're trying to teach the same to our daughters, and also we're trying to learn as well because we realize how much of knowledge and culture we're losing as we lose language. Thank you very much for doing this and sharing your views. So next I'll go to Tenzing again. And as we talk about harnessing indigenous knowledge, engaging with the communities, preserving the knowledge, bringing this outside the country, letting the whole world know about traditional medicine, as you work very closely with the communities, what is the model of giving back to the community? How do you work with the community so that community also gets back, not just the financial, but also other things, you know, maybe dignity of labor and things like that. So how is that put in place at your company?
Thank you so much. Very relevant question. But before I address this, since you talked about the language, maybe I'll touch upon. Sowa Rigpa, right, it is written in Tibetan language. And fortunately, the script that Tibetans use and the Bhutanese national language use is the same. And then the scripts that we read during rituals are those same texts that we are reading. So it is, for us, it's no problem of reading, but understanding in depth is a little difficult because those are in Tibetan language. So that advantage we had, that is why I think we could continue flourishing Sowa Rigpa in Bhutan. To address your question on how we give back to the community, in fact, the traditional medicine called Sowa Rigpa was instituted with the command of our third king in 1968. where they have established a small BHU, and from there on, I think it is coming to the mainstream healthcare system. From that time onwards, now it is almost 5 decades, we have been engaging the communities from the high altitude, which is still now about 5 days walk from the road point. And I have been there last year. So it is very interesting to know and keep them as partners with us. So what we normally do is, because those herbs are seasonal, on a seasonal basis, once in a year, our staffs go to those villages, which we have to cross about 5,000 meters, and then they are being already trained and taught the type of medicines, the medicinal plants they need to collect. We just have to give them the list. And then just now, most of the, almost 90%, you can collect it from the wild. And of course, because of the climate issues and all, some things have becoming very difficult to get. But most of the herbs still exist, and we engage them, and we pay them on cash. They love to have cash payment still now. So that is how they have been benefited. And we have a group, other parts of the country as well. We have high altitude and low altitude medicine. So we have another group, farmers engaged in low altitude medicines, which we have the same thing. And also, we have a strong conservation on biodiversity. We have a biodiversity center. It's an agency under the government, National Biodiversity Center, which looks after all this. And then they insist, or they engage us to how to give back to the communities. And they, as per the Nagoya Protocol, there's called access benefit sharing system. And that we practice, and what we do is, if we make products out of the resources that they provide us, apart from paying for the raw materials, we share the profit. If I'm not wrong, about 5% of the profit, we have to give it back to the community. And then they put it in their group. They have a group account like this. So that is how we engage, and they're very happy with this. So that is one way of giving back to them. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is, Ayurveda is well known, but as you said, Soarikpa is basically, actually not only in Bhutan, but across Himalayas. And there's amchis, you call it, the Tibetans call it amchis, even Ladakh call it amchis, we call it drungsos. But those Soarikpa is in fact practiced all across Himalayas, but in solitude. We don't interact so much. So therefore, it's not coming up, and we have not been able to harness those values and the things that actually has a lot of things to know about it. So therefore, nowadays, if you look at the trend, actually even the Western people are bending towards using traditional medicines than the modern medicines, because they understand that there are a lot of side effects from the Western medicines. And then since we use herbs and medicinal plants, there's hardly any side effects. Therefore, it is more sustainable, less side effects to use traditional medicines. That is why actually, in fact, there are a lot of things that we can capitalize and leverage on the things that we already have. So I think this forum, it is very important, and it connects the people across the Himalayan countries. And then I feel that it's particularly on Soarikpa, as I said before, and I have read some Soarikpa scriptures, which actually describes in details what you do. And you can, if you have research and all this and this, a lot of things can be done, and a lot of things will come out of that. So I think I'm very much thankful to this forum and speaking on this traditional medicine, and particularly on Soarikpa.
Great, thank you very much. I'll stick with you since I don't want to go around on the third round, so I'll basically go like this and then jumble up some questions. So to follow up on what you were talking about, you talked about the importance of Soarikpa and traditional medicine. Your company has been doing really well, especially in Bhutan, but there are some constraints when it comes to trying to cross the border. with this, right? And a lot of times we try to draw a direct comparison between modern medicine, allopathic medicine, and traditional medicine. And we try to fit that traditional medicine in the box we've created around allopathic medicine and say we need standardization, clinical trials around that. And it's trying to put triangle in a circle, right? And do you think that's the right approach? How should we go around it so that we can still, this has been practiced for thousands of years. So how do we go around this, not as individual countries, but also as through intergovernmental alliances? How can we do this, you think?
Okay, I think it's very relevant, and I need to talk more on this. Firstly, I think I said a lot of good things in my earlier things, but while I said that we have a healthcare system which respects both modern and traditional, but in reality, because the traditional medicines cannot be measured, it has no statistics to really see the efficacy of that. Although it has been, as you mentioned, although it has been practiced and for centuries, actually, it has worked. Because we cannot measure it and we do not have statistics. Therefore, even in Bhutan, although it is there in the healthcare system, but we get less attention to it, less focus to it. Because it cannot be measured, and the government cannot tell that, okay, I have made this many changes. Therefore, even in terms of the budget, it is like, okay, maybe the rest you can take it. That's all. And therefore, even in my company, when I manufacture traditional medicines, the number of items, medicines that we manufacture, in fact, is reducing. Because there's not much of budget. The government does not give so much budget, because it's not that they don't give it, but there's no proper way of documenting and showing to the people that how much healthcare system you have made the improvement. Therefore, there's a danger that it might even go down. And that is why we need to firstly to connect and work together from country to country. The other thing is now even I have happened to attend some of the WHO seminars, and even the WHO now understands well about traditional medicine and giving some attention to work on traditional medicine. And nowadays, I think because of the information technology advancement, a lot of things can be done. And then using particularly artificial intelligence, I think instead of going into the nitty-gritties of clinical trials and these things in terms of finding out the efficacy of the traditional medicine, maybe using AI, we may be able to come out and justify and do a lot of things so that we can really prove that this has less side effect. This is very makes health improvements and all this. So therefore, I think firstly, if you work together and try to share the knowledge and using all these new technologies, I feel that if the government and the regions can gives attention to it, a lot of things can be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Around traditional medicine, I see India and China doing a lot to have their own standardization techniques and methodologies to show the efficacy of that. And I think I'm sure we can learn a lot from that also. So I'll move to Marie and then to Anushka. So Marie, you talked obviously the relevance of language and knowledge, because language is one of the key communication medium to transfer knowledge, right? And can you share about some of the initiatives, interesting initiatives, and the things that you've been doing with the community for the last 13 years? And what does that model of giving back mean in the language domain and also beyond? If you can share some of that, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Yeah, so as soon as I started to work with communities in Nepal, I really wanted to implement a model that is really highly collaborative model, because I've been meeting a lot of indigenous people always rightly complaining that outsiders, Nepali or foreigners come, gather list of words, take recordings from the people without never showing back ever again in the community, or never sharing anything that they did with these recordings. And this is really a huge problem and in research, in academia. And I hope and I think things are changing, and people are like trying to be definitely more collaborative. So, for example, for the Chepang project, the Chepang language documentation and description project I've been working on for the last 6 years, starting in the middle of my PhD, I really wanted from the beginning to train native speakers to actually participate in the project in a more empowering way and a more active way. So these languages I'm talking about, they are not written, they don't have a writing system. So the work of the linguist is at first to come up with the understanding of the sound system of the language, and then of the other type of morphological structures at the word level, and grammatical structures, right? So at first, we do not have a writing system. And in the case of Chepang, the native speakers have had a huge struggle to write down their language by themselves. So using the tools they had, meaning the Devanagari script and or the Roman script, because in Chepang there is an additional consonant that is not there in Devanagari, and that is not there really phonologically in English. It's a glottal stop, so basically it's formed at the glottis with the blocking of the airflow, something like right? So this consonant, the lack of this consonant in Devanagari made it hard for them to come up with a script. So we come up together with a script, but to understand where was this consonant positioned, it took us a really long time. But I couldn't like work collaboratively with them without them understanding the phonological system, so the sound system of their language, right? So I trained the speakers that I worked with in linguistics, right? This is like a level of understanding that is equal to my first years of PhD, right? And I truly believe that anyone can understand what we are doing and how we do it if we transmit this knowledge. So we started to train them in this understanding of phonology of their language, and then they could by themselves transcribe any recording in phonetic alphabet. That's the first alphabet we use. And this is huge, because as one person, understanding the language, because I am an outsider, and doing the documentation work, and beyond the documentation, we don't just record, we have to transcribe every single recordings, and we have to translate it and understand it, right? So with this team of native speakers, we could do so much more than one person can do. Now, after 6-7 years, we have like over 50 hours of recordings of audio and video transcribed and translated into Nepali or English. And this is really awesome, because this covers local history, so many different topics of their cultural knowledge, right, or history. And all of this to say that the people I worked with, some of them are agriculturalists. They do not have an education. They never touched the computer. Some of them have maybe +2. Some of them, what is the diploma? Which one? No, another lower level. Yeah, SLC. They passed SLC or they don't have SLC. Whatever they have, they are able to do the work we do at the basic level, okay? This is true that they will need maybe a PhD in linguistics if they want to write a theoretical article, but that's not the point, because the point is to document and preserve these languages. So we can do a lot training people in the most basic way. And I think that in research, honestly, I don't know if it's laziness or lack of time and funding, but this is true that lack of time and funding plays a major role. But if we really take this time, it is amazing, the work you can do. The people I've worked with never touched a computer before, and now they do this amazing job. So, yes. So
if you
working
can add a
collaboratively.
little about what you were talking to with me yesterday about this translation part and also the stories. It's not just, since you're making the dictionary for Chepangs, 40, how many words is it?
Now we are working on publishing online the dictionary so that people can access it easily, not in some obscure archiving website where you need an ID and you need blah, 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 and people don't connect. So we are trying to put this dictionary online in the easiest manner. This dictionary of Chepang has over 4,000 lexical entries. We are recording every single word, and we are recording every like a sentence for each word, so that people can actually like put this word in a sentence. And yeah, so it's a lot of work, but we are working on this, and it would be ready maybe by September or something.
Right, beautiful, thank you very much. And you're not just playing with words, but then teaching them how to make sentences and stories as well, right?
Yeah. And now they are really independent on this. They know how to not only just come up with a sentence, a basic sentence, right? But a sentence that is also culturally appropriate and like interesting, related to the knowledge of the people, for sure, yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
And
now,
I know that Pratibha, I don't know if we have much more time, but I know, Pratibha, you're interested in Indian butter tree, right? Yes. And so according to, so the detail I wanted to give earlier about this knowledge is the way they classify the nouns related to the different churi trees. So in Nepali we say churi, in Chepang we say yosi, because this is a tree that is really important in the community. They make ghee off of this dana, these seeds.
yes, so we'll talk more
really
about that
interesting, yeah.
after the session also.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'll go to Anushka now, and Anushka and I met early on, like when Makuse had just started as well, right? And we worked together in one way or another for some time. And it's so impressive to see how Makuse has grown into this premium brand over the years. You know, how you've been able to do that as a team. And what are some of the interventions that should be in place to ensure that companies like Makuse, based on indigenous knowledge, can actually scale and sustain, you know, because there is so much more potential here, right? And then this is my first question. And second, if you can carry on with how can we build synergies among these companies so that we can go global, beyond Nepal? And how can we build synergies within a border and across borders?
Thank you, Prativati. We indeed met at a very, very crucial time, and I think the relationships that you form at the very beginning are so, so special, because you see us crying at the absolute rock bottom and rising up for this. I'm forever grateful for all the support that you've provided. Segueing from the conversations that we've had about, there is this general apprehension towards the word outsiders. It doesn't seem like a very nice word, and we were talking about this in our preparation conversation yesterday as well. That an outside perspective, I'd like to call it, is so necessary. And see, we become an outside perspective to so many things that are not our indigenous things as well. So quite often when it comes to preserving indigenous knowledge, recipes, or sharing in general, what I said about the gentleman not wanting to share the recipe, it comes with a certain apprehension, very much so. But that outside perspective is very much needed because as a Newar myself, I didn't perhaps realize, acknowledge the importance of the indigenous knowledge and recipes and the identity as a whole because it came too easy to myself. So sometimes that perspective that rooms such as these, full of global citizens, as cliched as it sounds, cliches are cliches for a reason, are very much necessary. Coming into what can be put in place for things to sustain? I think it very much links to the initial conversation that we're having about why people do not continue the family business or do not start it up when it is not a family business. As I see it, there's a couple of things. Firstly, there needs to be a certain pride to preserve. I call myself a proud Halwai these days. And that is a word that I know perhaps a few generations earlier would not be something that someone would be very proud to call. So that pride in that identity is very much required, and that very much links to that what I do has to make money and has to make sense. So that economic viability and that commercialization is very, very necessary because it's only going to go so far without it. We talked about the young people in the room as well. As a 28-year-old, I classify myself with them as well. Is that as much as for some it might come from a deeper place of reasoning, and I'm sure the young people in the room, it comes from a deeper place of reasoning, of wanting to preserve and promote that identity. For a lot of us, it has to be trendy. It does. I mean, it sounds very superficial in comparison to all the deep things that we've been saying and hearing from the stage, but as a young person, you know, it has to be trendy for it to continue. So to have that pride in what you do, it has to make money, it has to make sense. And for it to make sense, but it almost becomes like, did the hen come first or the egg, right? That if enough people do it, then it becomes trendy enough for everyone to do it. And then that spiral just continues. Just a small example of the clothing that we're all wearing right now, right? We're proud of what we're wearing, we own it. But if not enough people were doing it, maybe we'd not feel like, oh, what's it going to be? And that is what a lot of perhaps the generation above us faced. That is perhaps one of the reasons why a lot of people from my parents' generation don't speak the language because they were afraid to have an accent. That would hinder their globalization. They were afraid to wear what they love to global platforms for the fear of coming across as different. So I think that all links into what is needed to sustain and scale. I don't have an answer of what is needed so much externally as internally for us to own up our own identity. Starting with the smallest of things, and that's definitely started, but it has to continue a lot more for the young people to own our identity.
If you can add a little around, we talked a lot about identity and community, but also the technical parts of, the limitations and how, we can try to solve this together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the second part that comes into it is the knowledge gap. Our Halwais at Makuse are not Newars because we could not find Newars to make this anymore. Those who we could find were just on their way trying to apply for a visa to go out. But you'll be able to find somebody and recruit somebody to make the perfect red velvet cake, but we cannot recruit somebody to make the perfect good pack because it's not taught. Now, of course, there is a conversation to be had around, oh, but our culture is different. We have, what do you call it? When it's just shared by words, it's not written, it's not oral, right? There's a simple word for it. It's orally, it's shared amongst generations. But in the absence of that, their knowledge gap really does exist, and it's a big thing. I think one of the biggest hindrances in expanding indigenous knowledge, recipes, things globally is the technical aspect of it. And quite often it is equated with being, oh, but why should we fit in your box, right? But it's not so much about, I guess, that ego of why should we fit in your box and we have our own thing, but coming together to go ahead. And that formalization of knowledge is definitely needed. This comment will perhaps grow competition, but surely when there is more of us, we'll surely grow as an industry, be it food, be it skincare. And I think at the end, what I want to also touch base upon the knowledge gap and why that is necessary is because we have some brilliant examples. Harveda that you lead is an absolutely inspiring brand. I am an avid user, not because I love and I want to promote indigenous products because it's bloody good, is why it is. It's really good in comparison to all the international things that I've used. It is good, that's why we use it. So I think at the end of the day, when we talk about indigenous knowledge and products, two things that I'd like to sort of conclude on is that it's often referred to and equated with being exotic, and that's why sometimes we as producers also shy away from promoting things as indigenous because it might be considered exotic and not very commercially viable. So us owning that identity can help us break through that class ceiling of it being indigenous yet commercially viable and dependable and trustable in things such as healthcare as well. And finally, it is that it has to be the community that does it, the wider community. For example, if we're talking in Makuse terms, the Newar community, then the wider Nepali community to firstly support it, and then the global community can us together take indigenous knowledge forward, not as a CSR act, but because it is the next step to go. It is actually necessary, commercially viable, and good overall for the world that we live in.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Now we have 3 minutes, 50 seconds. I will wrap very quickly. I saw the interconnections, soul connection, I would say, between knowledge bearers and knowledge savers. We talked about catalyzing effect of finance, and these individual efforts at the micro levels are also important when we look at the macro level to catalyze change. So that's one thing. Another, as we catalyze change, to make it much bigger, government has to take ownership of this, and there is a lot of learning across borders as well that we need to utilize. While we do all of this and harness the knowledge, we need to give back to the community, and there has to be very strong benefit sharing model from IP, intellectual property protection perspective as well, which we can continue talking about beyond this forum. When we talk about product, I saw this as manifestation of our individual and collective identity. Products are just that. Experiences are just that. And it was beautifully put by all of you three. Thank you very much. And we talked about what is, we talked about what can be, and we will make it happen together. With this, we can still take one question. Please question, not comment, because we have 2 minutes, 27 seconds now, and someone with the mic has to run towards the person who has the question. Any question, please? Yes.
Yesterday in yesterday's session, we talked about the benefit of incorporating experience with the product, especially for the local products. So Makuse is a local luxury brand, and so experience become crucial in terms of globalization and branding. So how is Makuse looking forward in that segment, and how have they incorporated the experience in their product? Also, one other thing is, she talked about hesitation of the local people to not share the recipe. Maybe experience can help. Adding the experience with the product can help in that regard.
Surely, I think we have to earn that trust as well. So I did not take that I took that as a surprise, surely, but I tried to empathize of why they had that approach of what they did. Perhaps when we earn their trust, that we're trying to grow this together as a community, we can have them open up. As far as branding is concerned, surely a brand is an experience. A brand is not just a logo, not just a color scheme. And since we have a group of young people, a brand is surely not Instagram stories, grid of 3 coming soon. And then, you've got something, and then you've got Instagram account graveyards of just not continuing. It is continued experiences. We just cannot sit on our high horse and be like, oh, we've worked, we've done it, we've made it. Every order still, stepping into our 4th year, every order for us is as important as our first order. Every experience is as important. We accept that we are human and there's so much to improve in our processing system. But I think owning up to it, taking accountability, and having a very clear brand vision of where we want to, what is the Makuse experience? I, as a person, might like this table, might not like this table. My colleague might or might not. But does Makuse like it? Having to have a clear brand vision. It is very difficult to articulate so many things that are marketing and branding in words, and that's where adjectives and language really helps, right? So brand is definitely an experience, and we continue to be committed to providing that experience, because the day that we sit back and say we've made it, we'll be on our way down.
Thank you very much, Anushka. Because of Exactly 0, 0. So because of that, we will stop here. But what we were able to do here today was orient you all towards in this journey and think about this more. As I said, in 10 years, I was still in awe how much I don't know. So there's so much to learn and do together. Let's catch up even after the session and build alliances so that we can save indigenous knowledge, give back to the community, and respect the indigenous knowledge and culture together. Thank you very much. Thank you.